What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with last year, Nintendo was skipping different trade show events that people were hoping they'd come out to and maybe talk about the Switch 2. Well, now it appears they're going to be making the rounds quite a bit after the Switch 2 launch. And in fact, they did confirm another big event that they'll be at, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft and the potential, once again, for Steam to show up on their Xbox. So there's a new rumor going around about that, so we'll go over that. And then finally, the Bungie Marathon situation continues to get worse, and now it's getting downright ugly with an ex-employee speaking out about some of the leadership there and what they think should happen. So we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Switch 2 launch day, specifically if you don't have a pre-order now, because it looks like another retailer is going to have stock available. And in fact, it won't even be available to sell online. So I guess just walk-in customers will have first dibs on this. Now, this we can see posted by Jake Randall. This is over on his official account there on X, saying Target is doing in-person only for Switch 2 launch day purchases, no online at all. And I confirmed all of the information, including exactly what time and how they'll handle the process. Now, he has an entire video really going in depth, and of course, how to sort of approach this, even what time you should aim to show up at Target. But the bottom line is, and just good news in general for people who weren't able to get a pre-order on the night when they went live and things were just breaking all around us with Best Buy, Walmart, and yes, Target. It seems like many of these retailers, we've already gone over GameStop, Best Buy, and now we're seeing with Target that a lot of them will just have in-store, ready-to-go orders, whether it's at midnight in some cases, or even launch day following up. So just good news there for people out there still trying to get a Switch 2. Again, be patient. Don't buy from the scalpers and the resellers online. Seems like there's going to be plenty of opportunities on launch day and then maybe even beyond that. Also, it looks like Naughty Dog is working on another game outside of Intergalactic, which is something that had been sort of kicked around and rumored online, but now we have it straight from Neil Druckman. This we can see posted up. This is over on Insider Gaming, who transcribed it from the Press X to Continue podcast, saying there is another game at Naughty Dog being worked on, and I am more of a producer role and get to mentor and watch this other team, give feedback, and be like the executive in the room. So if I had to take a guess, all right, so we know Intergalactic is coming out, I assume 2027. It's gonna be one of the last games to come out, I think, this generation before we see Sony really start to move and talk about the PlayStation 6. However, this other game we think has been in development for multiple years. Some said like 3, maybe 4 years. And it seems like it would have ties to Uncharted. Okay, so look, there's been the idea of the follow-up to Uncharted 4 being with Cassie Drake and just being, I guess, a continuation of like the story and everything there. And it does make sense. It's been a while since an Uncharted game came out. That was back, I mean, last numbered one, Uncharted 4, that was what, 2016? We had Lost Legacy as well as sort of like like a spin-off separate game story and everything there, but a smaller one. However, it would make sense for Sony to do something else with the Uncharted franchise. It's a very popular series, so it would be kind of weird if they just sort of left it at that. So wouldn't shock me if that's what it is, but I guess, hey, we have something else from Naughty Dog somewhere out there, and hopefully they're ready to announce it here sooner rather than later. Oh, and we had a bit of noise around Nintendo and Metroid again. This, though, we can see it's posted up. This is from Stealth, mentioning that Metroid Prime 3 Corruption and Metroid Prime Hunters had both of their trademarks renewed. Okay, so naturally people are looking at this like, oh wow, something's happening here. We're going to get Metroid Prime Hunters moved over. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption has to come over ahead of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I do think it would make sense to have Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 available on, it should be on the current Switch, since, you know, that's where Metroid Prime 4 Beyond was originally announced back in 2017. But at the very least, have them all on the Switch 2 with Metroid Prime 2 at least being under that GameCube NSO umbrella. And I guess just Metroid Prime 3 Corruption being a separate release. But to me, it's just standard stuff here for trademark renewals. But we know there's going to be some Metroid stuff coming up at the very least with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and most likely Metroid Prime 2 going into NSO. Metroid Prime 3, that to me is still the big question mark as to how they would even handle that. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and them starting to attend game trade shows again, because last year they were kind of quiet and not necessarily making a big splash at most of the trade shows. Gamescom being a big one where they just decided, yeah, we're not really going to it. Now, they still kind of went to it. They just didn't really advertise it. They were mostly there quietly talking with third parties, that kind of stuff in meeting rooms behind the scenes. But in this case, we were looking to see if they would have some sort of big showing, maybe on the floor with Switch 2 stuff. That didn't pan out. However, now with the Switch 2 right around the corner, actually in a couple of weeks, it would make sense that we would start seeing Nintendo move again a bit when it comes to some of these shows coming up, with Gamescom right around the corner, technically, going towards the end of summer. And then, of course, we have Tokyo Game Show, and then even beyond that. So it does look like Nintendo, yes, is going to be attending Gamescom. This we could see was posted up over on VGC, as they are quoting Nintendo's official German account, where they say, "Mark it in red on your calendar. Nintendo will be back at Gamescom in 2025. We look forward to welcoming you from August 20th to 24th in Cologne," as of course being in Germany. And Gamescom is pretty massive. I mean, 300 some odd thousand people will attend most years, and it's continued to grow and grow and grow. And it makes sense here, obviously more than ever for Nintendo, since their Switch 2 being out June 5th. And then here we go with Gamescom, what's that, a few months later, 3.5 months later or so. So again, it makes sense for them to be there with the Switch 2, and considering we're expecting some sort of direct in June, typically for Nintendo, and just in general, June will be a very busy time next month for gaming in general. Summer Game Fest, Microsoft will have an event. You probably see some third parties. Capcom will most likely do something, Square Enix, and so on. So it's going to be a lot of announcements. We don't have E3 technically anymore, but we have still sort of that E3 time frame of just all of June. So it would make sense that Nintendo, along with third parties, would probably be showing up there to discuss different Switch 2 ports and releases, especially as they head towards the holiday season. And this should be a lot of fun in general after we get past the Switch 2's initial release, because I think Nintendo, yes, will be very, very active, go figure, around game announcements. And I think people right now are looking at Mario Kart and Donkey Kong. They're looking at those 2 months, right? So with the release in June and then July following up with DK, but most likely Nintendo will start to also add in a bunch of games towards the end of this year, and we still need things like Metroid Prime 4 Beyond dated, Kirby Air Ride needs to be dated, and I still think there is potential for there being a big 3D Mario somewhere out there. And what better way to really be able to showcase this stuff than with a big booth and setup at Gamescom with a ton of people attending, and then follow up a month or so later at Tokyo Game Show. So it's going to be a lot of fun here over the coming months. All kinds of games getting announced, I'm sure, and seeing Nintendo back at these trade shows should be a lot of fun to see what they have for us. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and apparently them testing Steam when it comes to their Xbox Windows platform. Now, this seemed to be kind of confusing online, and I was looking around for where exactly this came from, because all of a sudden online there are all these images, screenshots, people photoshopping Steam onto their Xbox dashboard. Okay, so I tracked it down here, and it seems to be coming from X's Ones, who is, I think, still kind of a sketchy source at this point, but they threw out a ton of information, and it was circulating all over the place. I just wanted to at least give some context of what I kind of think they're getting at here. So we can see this posted up over on Reddit. Again, there's a lot here. I'm mostly focusing in on the idea of Steam and Xbox. As they say, a new app called Steam DF Beta has appeared in the Windows Microsoft Store, allowing users to install Steam directly from the official store. The Epic Game Store is already integrated in the same way. This doesn't mean current Xbox consoles, Series X, S, 1, will natively run Steam, but that Windows and future Windows-based Xboxes will offer an easier download and install experience. Now, it's also important to note they mention a console-like shell on Windows, where Microsoft is developing a compatibility layer or shell to give Windows a console-like interface, similar to Steam's big picture mode, suitable for both PC gaming and next-gen Xbox systems. Xbox systems being the important part there, because while we have heard that Microsoft is developing a next-generation box and a next-generation handheld that I guess would use a dock, I still think the idea is to have Windows be much more friendly to a gaming or console interface, and then just kind of open it up to the idea of other manufacturers making systems that are little consoles, like Xbox systems, and maybe they'll even license that out, as we are seeing the Xbox logo and button on this ROG Ally system that even has like the Xbox handles, it looks like, on the side, kind of. So to me, this would make sense for them to say, okay, how do we let users have Steam available on these boxes? Well, we let them just install it straight up through the, what would then be the Xbox or the Windows Store for their system. It doesn't necessarily mean, as they say here, that the Xbox Series system that you have right now will be able to get a Steam client on there, because I think there is still a lot of compatibility issues around certain games that are developed for PC and other things, right? All the configurations that's designed for, and if it would even be able to take full advantage of the Xbox hardware right then and there with its configuration. So this is a serious task for Microsoft to figure out, if they would have Steam available anyway, and it would make more sense for that to be a quote-unquote next-generation feature that technically spreads itself out to all different third-party Xbox systems that would need to use Windows as its base anyway. So it's more, to me, something to keep an eye on with the ecosystem and the OS and the user interface and how they make that work across the board. But yeah, that would mean that Steam would be involved in some way, along with Epic Games Store, and to have it here available on the Xbox Store that would come preloaded on your we'll say your Asus Xbox console. That does make sense why they'd be testing it now. But I am very curious how they present a lot of this. Again, this is kind of the running theory and the running rumor as to what they're going to do for next gen. How exactly do you show this to everyone and go, it's all going to make sense when you have third-party manufacturers come in from all sides trying to develop their own Xbox? It's going to be an interesting one to see that at least be explained and become more simplified than I can imagine it being right now when you walk into a store and see all these systems lined up. Next up, let's talk about that Bungie and Marathon situation that's turning downright ugly at this point. I mean, this is a dire situation, I feel like, for Bungie, with how perception has shifted from bad to, like, worse. Like, again, ugly at this point for Marathon. So much so that we have an ex-employee speaking out, and it would make sense to see this now after all the stuff that's happening with the art theft. They've admitted to it this time, and them having a history of it. But we can see this is posted up. This is over on the Game Post. Says a former Bungie developer who worked on Marathon, known online as Spirited, who shared a comment about his experience on social media. On Sunday, Spirited posted online saying, as a former Bungie employee who worked on Marathon, I feel for those still at the studio. Working with engineering and Marathon leadership was extremely toxic and humiliating. I won't speak about the rest, but Bungie leadership needs to be gutted completely. Now, there is proof that they worked, on their LinkedIn, they have it from June 2022 to May 2024 as a senior software engineer. To my understanding, though, at this time, they've kind of removed that comment that they put up, but it's, The leadership at Bungie has already been in question. We saw what happened before, where the mass layoffs hit. It seemed like they were burning through like capital in general at an alarming rate. And we know that Microsoft, just based on some of the leaked documentation from the FTC trial and stuff, that they were looking around at Bungie as a potential purchase or acquisition, and they didn't buy them for some reason, now it's all lining up when you see a lot of the stuff happening with Sony. Sony's even going as far as to have some of the talent move over within PlayStation Studios under Sony's control, and like Team LFG was formed so they can continue to work on that incubation project Gummy Bears. And seeing what's happening with Marathon currently, which Paul Tassi in his video, just based on some of the discussion as to what Bungie higher-ups would see as Marathon being successful, saying it has to finish in like the top 5 for Circana or MPD, right, in the US sales for games for the year. And it's coming out in September, and it's probably a $40 game, which I from my understanding, Circana tracks by revenue. I don't really know how that's possible. That's how they would determine it being a success. I don't know what they think is going to happen here with Marathon, but you know what? I ran a poll to see if people would buy it, and Well, we'll see how similar it is to the Concord poll that we ran before. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a new PC handheld that's been announced, this one coming from MSI, which we know they have the MSI Claw, and that is Intel-based, but now it appears they'll be trying their hand with AMD in that Z2 Extreme chipset. This we can see is posted up. This is over on VG Charts with a Z. This was announced at Computex, so technically they've gotten, I guess, out ahead of Asus with their ROG Ally line because they haven't announced their Z2 Extreme PC handheld yet. They have the entire spec sheet here for it as well. This is the Claw A8 BZ2EM. Rolls right off the tongue for all the PR out there and marketing. But this with that Z2 Extreme processor, of course, 8 cores, 16 threads based on Zen 5 architecture with the Radeon 890M. That's 16 RDNA 3.5 compute units. The screen itself, 8-inch full HD display, 120 Hz refresh rate. It does have VRR enabled as well. And with the RAM on board, it says up to 24 gigabytes, dual channel, LPDDR5X, and the battery is 80 watt hours, and so none of that's too surprising. It looks actually very similar to what they have with their Claw 8 AI Plus. So this is really them again looking at AMD, and they still have like their Intel-based handheld as well. So I mean, it'll be kind of interesting even to compare those. The thing with the Intel one, though, it really came down to a lot of the driver support for the most part when it comes to performance and just compatibility in general. There are some weird things that were happening, some growing pains, we'll say, when it comes to Intel and some of their graphics side, but as they're able to push more and more updates, it did get better in general with performance in some of the bigger titles. Call of Duty being one that definitely had issues, but certainly was more and more worked out as they went along. But with AMD and that Z2 Extreme chip, that is going to be very interesting. Just see some of the benchmarks here with this new chipset compared to the Z1 Extreme, and then some of the faster memory that they're putting into this alongside of it. So I'm expecting some decent performance gains, but nothing crazy necessarily. Valve themselves has said with the Steam Deck 2, they were waiting for a more generational leap as they are working more closely with AMD to kind of develop their own custom chip. So I still think for Valve with the Steam Deck 2, probably 2026, I think. Probably like second half 2026. So at least here with the Z2 Extreme will give us an idea as to how AMD is progressing here with some of the graphics and performance on the PC handheld side. But at this point, nothing when it comes to price, which it's going to be expensive, and nothing with release date, but we are expecting this later on this year, so I guess keep an eye out for it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you picking up Marathon when it releases in September? 97% say no, 3% say yes. I believe this is slightly better than Concord. I think Concord's, that was almost 100%. It was very close. I think this is 1% better. I mean, it's not like a great company to be in then if you're like, oh wow, no one's buying this. I know a lot of times I'll put up polls around if you're buying this, yes or no, but I mean, come on, it's at very least, maybe 50% are like no, but then you have a bunch of other people like, maybe if it goes on sale, yes, I'm absolutely buying it. 97-3. There were some in the comments like, even beyond the controversy, I wasn't going to buy it anyway. And I get it. I mean, the online live service sector has already been beaten down a lot in general, just because of the amount of fatigue and how it's very obvious that all these companies are trying it without coming up with too many new ideas. It's like very formulaic. And then, of course, the stuff that's really broken now when it comes to the art theft and Bungie just spiraling out of control with this game. It's not good right now for Marathon, and I still don't know if delaying it to the following year and letting the internet move on to the next thing is really going to help it much. And then we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Old Man, who says, the art theft in Marathon is a minor issue easily solved with money, credit, and or lawyers. The real problem is a lack of single player killing any interest in the game. So I understand what you're saying with, oh, you can write him a check and most likely that'll be enough. They still would want to remove any of the artwork any of the assets that were taken and put into the game from this person's portfolio, just to make sure they're covered completely. So at the very least, they're going to have to scrub through the game and rip out a lot of this stuff. And it's not even necessarily, it's tough to take the stuff out. I think it's something they can accomplish in a reasonably short period of time, but they have to be very thorough about it. If there's anything left in there, that could be problematic for them. But still, you could solve it with money. But the public perception was already not great on the game. I mean, it wasn't terrible. Some people were like, oh, okay, cool. It's an extraction shooter. I'm interested. I'll check it out. This is not helping. This has not helped at all. It is, I think, like another shot. So we've had all these hits on Bungie when it comes to them taking artwork, plagiarizing, ripping off smaller artists. This one's really bad because, again, Marathon's already been set up on, I don't know if it's really worth picking up. Now people are just going to go, I'm not really interested in supporting that kind of behavior with a big company taking from a smaller creator, and they are like, yeah, I'm not even going to do anything about it because, like, what am I going to do? It's like, it's this big company. I don't have the means to go through the legal process to make it happen. So it just looks really bad for Marathon. It looks really bad for Bungie. And I don't know what happens to Bungie if Marathon just completely like flops, and it's kind of looking like that is going to happen. So I would expect at that point, Bungie most likely gets cut down or really absorbed maybe by Sony, and they just kind of go, you know what? We missed on that $3 billion plus acquisition. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed Newswave yesterday, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see some of the stuff I picked up from a retro mega store that I visited a few weeks ago. I'll leave that in a video right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.